Welcome to the last of the Col-Hi Wildcats 1982 podcast, brought to you by Beats on Man Productions.
High. One of the students, I have no idea who he was, but he was in wood shop, and he took that picture and put it on some masonite, and then and cut them up into puzzle pieces. His picture of College High, and I got every piece but one. There was one. I put it together and had one missing piece. Well, that's pretty good, out of all of those.
Tell you what, later on looking back, it was their parents. I grew up without a dad in the home, but their parents had a huge impact on me.
Cheated to win, and this young man asked why he cheated, to win. And in the course of that conversation, he said he wanted to get the gold. He had to get the gold medal, but he came to the realization that if you're not enough without the gold medal, you're never going to be enough with the gold medal. And I think I love that.
Each of our little places and picked up papers and stacked them in the back of the truck and then brought them into the school. And that was a fun thing for us. My dad and I did a lot of stuff together, but my father was very, very precise about how things should be stacked in the truck.
Of course.
So, you can just picture all of these bags of papers. They could not just be thrown in the back of the pickup.
Had to be stacked.
They had to be stacked exactly perfectly. They would fit a certain way. And so I got a lot of education during high school on how to appropriately pack things.
Old Tetris.
I can put anything in the back of my car. I can fit more stuff in the back of my car than anybody else can.
Hey, this is Scott Townsend. Welcome back to the last of the Col-Hi Wildcats 1982 podcast. And today I have with me special guest veterinarian Billie Winter. Billie, how's it going?
It's going all right today, Scott.
Awesome.
I love your little friend.
BB, yeah. So thought since you're a vet, you'd like to see BB, and maybe everybody else likes to see BB too. But anyway.
Hi, BB. Hi.
I'll let you down now, okay? All right. Say hi to everybody. Okay. So, where are we talking to you from?
Well, right now, I am sitting in my office in Littleton, New Hampshire. So I own a little practice, companion pet care in Littleton, New Hampshire, which is way up north, about 70 miles south of the Canadian border. I've been here for 21 years now.
Oh, wow.
It's a lovely little town. And you picture the little New England town. This is it. Little Main Street.
Covered bridges.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Not quite as many as in New Hampshire as are in Vermont, but yeah, there are a lot of those things. So it's kind of a idyllic little town.
That's cool. I've never been up that far northeast. Boston's as far as I've gotten.
Right. We're much nicer than Boston.
I would, yeah, I'm sure of that. So I was well, I'm gonna go through the yearbook here in just a little bit. Why don't you, if you don't mind, kind of just catch us all up to speed, those of the Wildcats watching or listening, kind of bring us up to speed as to what's been going on in Billie's life for the last 40 years.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Lots of places, lots of things. So after graduation, probably like about half of our class, I went to OU.
Oh yeah.
And got my bachelor's degree in chemical engineering there. Also as my true love is still probably music. I played in the Pride of Oklahoma for all 4 years.
Oh, you did?
Yes, I did.
Oh, that's
Went
cool.
to 2 Orange Bowls, went to Fiesta Bowl, won a national championship while we were there. So
Of course you did.
I had to fit that in there somewhere.
Yeah.
So after that, I had always kind of intended to go on to graduate school, and I knew that I was interested in more of a biomedical bent. So I applied various places and studied quite a few graduate programs, and ended up in Seattle at the University of Washington in their bioengineering program. And so I was there for 6 years, got my PhD in biomedical engineering, basically doing cancer research, tumor immunology. So that was really cool, and it's still a big interest of mine. Research is a lot of fun. Writing papers and writing grants isn't so much fun.
Yeah.
And at the time I graduated from graduate school, industry research was sort of disappearing. Everything was academic research. And so it was getting a little bit more difficult to do the stuff I wanted to do. So I progressed on through a postdoc, and I did some animal research and things like that. Came around to the fact that working with animals was absolutely the most fun part of my day.
Mm-hmm.
So after about 10 or 15 years of that, I decided it was time to go back to vet school. My mother tells me that I always was going to be a vet. She knew that from the time I was little on. I wish she had told me somewhere sooner, so I
get on with it.
I know, could have avoided some of the stuff in between. So by that time, I had been to Washington, D.C. with my husband. We were postdocing there, moved back to Kansas and did some research there. So I went to Kansas State because that was my in-state school at the time.
Oh, okay.
And graduated from there in 2001, and I've been up here ever since. Came to work for some people who were graduates of K-State who owned this little practice, and 2 years later bought it from them, and here I sit.
Oh, that's cool. Wow. So in the yearbook that I was going through the yearbook, and I was looking up like I do everybody, and oh my gosh, you take up like half the yearbook.
Hardly.
Page 18, clarinet. Page 20, band. 21, paper drive.
Oh my.
22, National Merit Semifinalist. 23, Gene Dean Association, John Baird Society. 29, Physical Science Club. 130, oh, I see, 99 was your picture, or yeah, and then 130, 131. You were in the American Legion. You got the American Legion Award, Distinguished Student Award, which first class award from the Girl Scouts, which took 3 years, and
Right.
You taught clarinet.
Yes, I did.
So how did you fit all that in? I didn't do one of these things. Oh well, I was in band in junior high, but oh my gosh, so I'm gonna park there just for a minute. Because I didn't graduate summa cum laude. I graduated more like laude how come. And so you and I were on 2 different spectrums.
We were all in the same place.
Yeah. But so how do you do all that? I mean, was there how can a student do all that? Is there there's got to be some discipline here. There's got to be some routine. There's how do you do that? If you were to talk, if you were to tell students today how to do all that, what's the recipe?
Oh goodness, I wish I could get my own kids to do all that stuff. I don't know. It's just the way it worked. I was so interested in music. That was sort of my thing. So I had to fit that in everywhere. And so always playing in the band, working toward, I didn't take a lot of private lessons, but I did do some, and then managed to teach them as well to young kids. So that had to be fit in. That was too important. I played the piano, I played clarinet all the way through. So it just sort of snuck in with the academics. It's fortunate that, band gets to be a class.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that could be part of my day every day. So I don't know. The other stuff was all pretty much just school stuff. A lot of fun. I love being in, the John Baird Society and the Gene Dean Association and all those kind of silly things that we did.
Right.
So, but yeah, trying to fit the music aspect in has always been important, and it still is. That's something that I still do. A lot of every place I've been, I've carried that clarinet with me. And, yeah, played in every community group I can find, and here I play with 3 or 4 different groups. So I think it lets you do something else other than that job that you have to think about all the time. It's a nice escape into a whole different world.
I love music too. I like listening to it. I don't play anything anymore. Just barely played the trumpet at one point. But it's really, I mean, I was telling my brother the other day that so often I listen to music passively in the background. And I thought to myself the other day, why don't I listen to music on purpose? So I, from time to time, will set aside like 5 or 10 minutes.
Right.
And I'll just play something, either classical, rock and roll, whatever, and just close my eyes and actually listen from start to finish. And that's super. That's a lot of fun. That's a lot of fun. Who's your favorite composer?
Oh, well, it's Mozart.
Yeah.
I'll still play Mozart all day long. Aaron Copland as a more modern composer is one of my very most favorites.
Appalachian Mountains or something.
Appalachian Spring. Yeah. It's beautiful stuff. Rodeo, beautiful ballet music. So yeah, he was cool. But most of the classical stuff I'm very fond of. And you talked about being an active listener. That's kind of an interesting concept, because so much of this literature I've played over the years, both orchestra or wind ensemble, and it's a whole different world listening to it once you've played it. You hear so many different things that you didn't hear before, and you suddenly know how it all fits together. It's amazing. It's something I wish everybody got a chance to do. And just sitting and trying to listen actively is something that would be, somewhat akin to that. So it's a good thing.
I think I love John Williams, the music. Movie music, My wife and I the other night were watching YouTube videos of different orchestras playing John Williams music, and
right.
Just can't get enough of that.
No, it's very fun.
Yeah.
For a modern composer, his movie music is amazing. Every band I played in, we have compilations of John Williams medleys of stuff. It's a lot of fun to play.
The one thing no one's ever talked about in these interviews associated with the band was the paper drives. How did that work?
Yeah, I have to reach back really far to think that through, but that was a fundraiser. So we collected newspapers, and they were given to somebody to turn into insulation. I think that was the goal. So everybody around town was invited or asked to save their newspapers and put them out either in paper bags or tie them up with twine, I guess. And we were all broken up into little teams, and my dad and I always did this on whatever Saturday morning it was. And we had an assigned area. We drove around to, each of our little places and picked up papers and stacked them in the back of the truck, and then brought them into the school. And that was a fun thing for us. My dad and I did a lot of stuff together, but my father was very, very precise about how things should be stacked in the truck.
Of course.
So, you can just picture all of these bags of papers. They could not just be thrown in the back of the pickup.
Had to be stacked.
They had to be stacked exactly perfectly. They would fit a certain way. And so I got a lot of education during high school on how to appropriately pack things.
Little
And to this
Tetris.
day,
Mhm.
I can put anything in the back of my car. You know, I can fit more stuff in the back of my car than anybody else can.
What's what's that quote? How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice.
That's true.
How do you get a national merit? How do you become a national merit semifinalist? I think what was you and Denise Washer and Brett Thomason and
Right. John Sayre,
John
George
Sayre,
Davis.
George Davis,
Anita probably was.
Anita
I would
Holtz.
guess
Yeah.
Anita Holtz probably was.
Lacey,
can't-
John Lacey. I can't remember. I can't remember
I
if it was in that.
don't
picture or not.
remember for sure. There was one more. I think there were 7 of us. But anyway, I don't know. That's just what realistically what it is being a good test taker. That's what it was.
Okay.
That's I don't have any good excuses for that one, you know.
So what's it take? I mean, to be a good test taker, what do you do? What does that mean? I mean, I took a lot of tests too, but my outcome and your outcome are always miles different. What did I do? What did I not do that you were doing?
It's a good question. I must have learned, because I still multiple choice tests are still something that comes pretty straightforwardly to me. There were techniques for reading through a question and eliminating the things that didn't make sense and going with your first impression. And then I would always go back, you know, if I put little tick marks by the ones that I was not 100% sure of, then when I was done, I would go back and recheck those. But so I think that sort of technique is helpful. And I'm trying to teach my kids that, because they're going through their SATs and things like that now too. So that was the biggest help to me. I have friends who are absolutely brilliant who can't take a standardized test to save their lives.
Man.
So it's really a kind of an unfair screening mechanism for school and things like that. But I was a little bit gifted in that. I don't think I had to study to figure out how to do it. It just came.
So there's the questions that you know.
Right.
You can do those fast.
Right.
And then you go back and there's the ones that you can deduce or you can decipher what the answer is based on either how the question is posed or process of elimination.
Right. Pretty much.
So now you're about 2/3 of the way there.
Sure.
And then the last 1/3, I guess, is just going through and just, you got to put something down, you know.
That's true. As long as it's not a test that penalizes you for wrong answers, then you got to choose something, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, being a good guesser helps too.
Yeah. Well, whew, man. So you went on to OU, played in the band there.
Right.
What was life like growing up in Bartlesville for you? Did you grow up in Bartlesville? Were you born here?
Yes, I did. Born and raised in Bartlesville. Started out over on the west side of town, somewhere on Hickory, but that's where my dad's little house was when he and my mom first got married. But shortly after that, we moved into Burlingame Hills. I think it was technically the name of our neighborhood, but it's a little neighborhood right by Joe Allen Low Park. So.
Okay. All right. Oh, okay. Yeah. Got it.
So kind of across the street from Hillcrest in that area. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's where I lived and grew up pretty much the whole time. My mother still is there. That's still my home.
Oh, that's awesome.
It is. And I've always got a place to stay when I come home. I think Bartlesville was pretty special. It was a really nice place, I thought, to grow up for a small town, to have all of the amenities that it did. Mm-hmm. Kind of a unique town for a town of that size to, you know, pretty much be made up of Phillips research scientists and executives and the doctors and lawyers and things that went with it. It's kind of an interesting town. I think we had sort of, more everything for a small town than so many of them that I've been in since then. So I think it was a fantastic place. That, I went to Wayside School, which is a fun little school, and I still have, Facebook friends and things from my group at Wayside, and then on through Central, and then College High. So Central was tough, if you went through junior high school too.
Oh yeah.
The worst time in everyone's life.
Yeah, I don't know. Garfield was pretty bad when we first moved to Bartlesville. Garfield was still standing where the community center is now.
Oh,
But,
okay.
yeah. So, I was there. I think the first person I met was James Jones.
Mm-hmm.
But, we had moved from Texas. It was a perfect little town, Waco, Texas.
Right.
Moved here. Rain I've told this story before. It felt like it rained every day for 3 months, and
Right.
we're renting this little house until mom and dad got the house, that they got a house. And I went to Garfield, and God, you don't know anybody. And I'll quit whining now, but that's, yeah. Central was kind of bad, but Garfield was, oh man.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never had to deal with that. That was another really fortunate thing, is we were camped in one place for the whole growing up. I didn't have to meet new people till I went to OU,
Did you have any brothers or sisters? I don't know.
I have one little sister,
Okay.
Nikki. She's 5 years younger than me. So she graduated as a Bruin, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So she's in Minnesota now. But yeah, just the two of us. So nice little family.
The being a veterinarian, I can imagine I read all the books. James
Harriet. Yeah.
I read all those. So it must be, oh man, so much fun to be a vet. But these little guys can't talk back to you, which must be frustrating. But I'm sure 21 years later, there's a lot of signs and signals animals are giving off that probably the average person doesn't pick up, but you can tell just by a tail wag or a ear flop or how, whatever. What's that like? What's it like being a vet?
It is a really cool job. Like I said earlier, I wish I'd done it 10 years earlier, because I sort of missed out on some of that stuff. But it's a very interesting job. I mean, dealing with animals is wonderful, and you get to do so many good things for a whole group of cats and dogs. I'm just a small animal vet, but you're right. You do develop a lot of observation of tiny little things, the way they're holding their head or the way they're walking a certain way. You already know before the dog walks in the door what's wrong with them, and you have the joy of explaining that to their owner. But that's honestly, that turns out to be such a small piece of what you do. There's the fascinating thing, I think, and what I really enjoy about being a vet is all of the interaction with owners and the impact that I get to have on a human animal bond, keeping that intact, letting owners continue to enjoy their pet. And that's something that has just gotten stronger and stronger and stronger, even through this 20 years that I've been doing this. How important the relationship is between an owner and their cat or their dog. And I play a large role in facilitating that. And between me and my staff, we've found that, actually communicating with clients is far and away the most important thing that we do. I mean, I stand there and do surgery and things like that too. So that part is all fun. But that's the real heartwarming part of it is the interaction. You probably see that with James Harriet books, if you remember them too.
Yeah.
the funny stories are always about him and the old farmer.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
I believe that. I mean, I'm totally bought into that. The animals and their owners. I used to not understand that, but I understand it now. We've had a dog before, BB of Scooby, and yeah, and during the pandemic, I was stuck in here
right,
studio for 2 years. A year and a
right.
half. And BB's in here, and I would talk to BB just like she could totally understand what I'm saying, and I felt like she understood and could actually talk back either through her eyes or if she got
She
up, or
does. That's
so it's,
real.
yeah, that's real. And I mean, she's the only living being that's been physically with me almost 24 hours. You know,
Right.
it's
Oh,
just
absolutely.
amazing.
Absolutely.
Totally
Yeah.
amazing.
The pandemic has presented a lot of interesting differences and changes in the way I think probably a lot of businesses work, healthcare businesses in particular, but obviously I know about the veterinary world. People were like you at home all day long with their cats and their dogs, and became much more observant of things that were going on. So our my business actually increased significantly during that time, and continues to be, because people are so aware of changes in their pets. And a lot of people went out and got new pets because they were at home.
Yep.
And what do I do now?
Yeah.
I need a new dog.
I heard the SPCA was really short on cats and dogs because people were doing just that.
I suspect that's true. We live up here in the back of Beyond, and you think we'd have nothing but stray dogs up here, but there are no dogs to be adopted up here. Most of my clients are going through petfinder.com or whatever and bringing dogs up from the South somewhere where they do have a lot more dogs. So it's a really interesting phenomenon. So
what's the most interesting case you had with being a vet? At Manley's office, there's a picture of him holding a bald eagle or something. James Harriet, I'll never forget the one, the horse was choking or something, and
probably,
and the guy didn't know what was going on, and maybe it was a dog. Anyway, it had swallowed a marble or a ball or something, and it got stuck right down in here. And
yeah.
Harriet found it and popped it out, and what are there any cases that over the years stand out where it was a head scratcher at first and then?
Oh, I'm sure there were. I wish I had thought about this. This would have been an interesting story. The thing that always comes to mind, and in fact, this is kind of funny because if you're not a cat owner, you wouldn't even think about this, but on a lot of the veterinary Facebook pages now, that Facebook is such an amazing thing anymore, but people are sharing pictures of things that they've seen. And one of our fun ones was a vomiting cat, young cat, and you take an x-ray and there's clearly stuff in the stomach that shouldn't be there. And it's got this weird appearance. And so obviously you got to go to surgery. So that one we went in and we found 19 hair ties. It's just elastics, hair elastics, those ones that are kind of coated in like thread or whatever. And you think to yourself, how weird, surely after you ate one, you would decide that wasn't particularly tasty. But no, this one had 19. And since that time, as I've watched other people post their cases, there are people pulling 100 hair ties out.
Oh my gosh.
Stomachs. And I don't know. Cats are weird creatures. Have you ever had a cat?
Oh yeah. We've had like 4, not all at once. Well, I think maybe we did all at once at one time.
I have 9 right now. So you're
Oh my gosh.
Well, they just sort of, they accumulate. But yeah, they're interesting creatures. And why in the world? I mean, they have no flavor. What's so exciting about that?
Yeah.
But that's a funny one. So I think we've done that. Oh, I remember a really interesting one now that made me think of it. This was quite a few years ago, and when Gorilla Glue first started to appear on the scene. It's an interesting product because as it cures, it expands, right? It makes this, fills spaces in, almost like a foamy stuff that the original Gorilla Glue.
Right.
So I had this young man who had this little dog. I think she was just a puppy at the time, and she was also having GI issues. You know, she could drink water. Water was fine, but she couldn't eat anything. It would come back up. And we take X-rays, and it looked like she just had a stomach full of food. It had that appearance. So after a couple of days, and we fed her barium, which is a contrast agent that you put in, and it illuminates parts of the GI tract on X-rays, so you can see if the barium stops somewhere, you know that there's an obstruction there. Well, no, that went right through this stuff and went on into the gut. And so finally we did have to go to surgery, and her stomach was, it must have been this big around for a small dog. And it was it was filled with this plasticky cast, foamy looking cast.
Oh my gosh.
She had eaten, she'd gotten into the bottle of Gorilla Glue and eaten the Gorilla Glue, and it got as far as her stomach.
Oh my
and then and it hardened and expanded, and water could get through all those little holes, but
yeah,
no food. So that one was interesting, and I feel like I had never seen anybody talk about that before. So I kind of feel like I had one of the first Gorilla Glue ingestions.
So when you opened it up, it was just like it had, it just formed inside of the stomach.
The shape of the stomach, exactly.
And so were you able to pull it away from the stomach wall? I mean, did it just come out?
I did have, it takes a little bit of working because the inside of your stomach's not completely smooth. So, it took a whole incision across the whole front side of the stomach, the top surface of the stomach, in order to get this thing out. But it came out.
Who was your group you hung out with in high school, looking back in 82?
Yes, I had an awesome group. There were 6 of us, 6 girls. We were together from 7th grade all the way up through senior. It was me, Rhonda Bresson, Carol Bost, Carla Shepard, Jerry McLemore, and Denise Washer.
She mentioned the exact same people when I interviewed. As a matter of fact, I'm working on her video right. I was working on it before you and I got on. Denise Washer.
Oh, for Denise, awesome,
yeah. She mentioned every one of these people. See, she and Rhonda used to ride the bus together. Jerry McLemore's in Connecticut or something.
She's in North Carolina right now.
North Carolina, okay. Well, cool. Yeah, that's great.
So, yeah, we were ride or die friends. That So I was really very lucky. We were very lucky. I mean, everybody knew everybody's parents. It was a very safe group, and we did lots of stuff together. So and we are still in touch. I don't know, Denise probably told you that.
Yeah, she said that y'all get together and talk about stuff. Yeah,
right. That's one thing that the pandemic and Zoom has done for us. We figured out that we can talk to each other on Zoom.
Yeah, she was telling me about her all that with her daughter and stuff, and I didn't know anything, and I was speechless. I could hardly take it. But
I can't. I was at her wedding, and I can't hardly think my way through all of the things that she's been through.
Yeah. Jerry McLemore, I'd like to talk to her. She used to live out in Oak Park. I remember her out there. Carol Bost, I didn't know so well. Carla Shepard, I knew, and Rhonda, I didn't know so well either. But I'd like to get those people involved in that.
You should. They all have interesting parts to their story for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's that would be interesting to talk to everyone.
What's the when I say college high senior, last graduating class for you, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
When
Yeah,
you
go
say
ahead. Go ahead. Say that thought.
the thing that I think of when you say that is Chris Zervis walking across the stage, being the last graduating Wildcat. That's what comes to mind. That's the picture in my head. Because I was close to the end of the alphabet too. So.
Yeah.
But it's funny. Other than that, it always makes me kind of sad that our school isn't there anymore. I always felt like that was a pretty special place, and
Right.
it's all still there, but
It's all still there, but
it's different.
it's different. Yeah.
So it's a little nostalgic.
You're right. It's something that you and I and this group, it's kind of like a club we belong
It
to,
is. It is.
What kind of car did you drive?
Now?
No, then.
Or back then? Oh dear. I drove my dad's 1956, 1959 Porsche 356A.
Wow, that's a pretty cool car right there.
Yes, it was. I don't know why he let me drive it.
Yeah.
It was the only car that was at my disposal, so that's what I drove. But yeah, I was spoiled rotten. I mean, it was an old car, but it was.
But still, I mean, that's awesome.
Not many people get to drive a Porsche to high school.
Right. So all these things that you did here, surely you got in trouble. Surely you guys got in some kind of shenanigans or
Never anything
that you can tell.
Nothing too serious. I have to say we were pretty good kids. I don't know. Denise is the only other one you've talked to so far, right? Of my
Right.
group. Did she tell you the graveyard story?
No. So now you have to.
Yes, they'll all kill me. Some little graveyard over on the west side of town. I don't remember which one. You ask the other girls when you talk to them, they'll probably remember the name. But we were
behind Murphy's off Virginia.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's about where it was.
Yeah.
I don't know which one what its name is. But,
yeah, I don't either.
So we were obviously at least 16 because I was driving. I had my dad's pickup, and we got it in our heads that we were going to go to the graveyard and put a tape recorder on graves, just in case there were, voices to be heard or whatever. So it was the very six of us. I had my dad's little yellow Chevy pickup, and it had a topper on the back. So 3 of us were in the front seat, and 3 people were in the back with the topper on. And we got out there. I think Jerry was the one who was going to run out and put the recorder on the top of the grave. And so she ran out to do that. I think some of the girls in the back had gotten out. Rhonda was sitting in the middle, and as soon as Jerry got out, she closed the door. Jerry had a panic attack out in the dark. I remember, she probably doesn't remember it this way, but I remember beating on the door, trying to get back in, and the gals in the back beating on the back window, drive. So somewhere one of us has this audio cassette,
Oh, how cool would that be?
I don't remember who's got it. It might be Rhonda. I don't know. But anyway, somebody has it with all of this, caterwauling going on, banging on the window. Let me in.
Yeah.
Drive.
Well, so, if you're listening to this and you have that cassette, let us know. We'll add it to this podcast. That would be really fun to listen to.
It would be funny. I know one of us has it. Whether it can be found, I don't know. But
man,
but you can tell from that we were pretty good kids.
Yeah, that's pretty safe. Yeah.
Yeah.
And did you go to prom?
I did. Stephen Shiflett was my
my
prom date. Yeah, he was sort of one of the peripheral parts of our group. So there were several other people that sort of came and went along with us, but
Yeah.
so yeah,
That's
and we
cool.
stayed in touch for quite a while, and that was sad to lose him
Right.
a
Yeah.
while ago.
When you look back on college, when you graduate, what would you say to your 18-year-old self? Knowing
This-
what you know now, what would you say
Right.
to Billie as she steps off the stage and say, "Come here, I want to tell you something. This is what you need to know."
Well, there's a couple of things. There's the one, and I think probably everybody realizes as they get older, is that, you've got to not worry so much about what everybody else is thinking about you,
Yeah.
because to be honest, they're not thinking about you at all. They're
No.
worried about themselves.
Yeah.
And that's a hard one, as at that age, you're so concerned about how you appear to everyone else. And so with my own 17 and 18-year-old at home right now, I work very hard at trying to get them to not be so concerned about that. I may have succeeded
Right.
a little too well. They really don't care about a lot of stuff. But so that's number one. But the one that's really kind of specific to me is, everybody says this, but it really applied to me, is just because you can doesn't mean you should. I went off to school to do chemical engineering, not with really any intention of, or not any knowledge particularly of what they did. I was good at math. I loved chemistry. It was the perfect marriage of a degree, right?
Right.
So, and it was, it's a good degree. Obviously, everything that I learned in there has been applicable to my life. But then went on to do this doctorate in biomedical engineering, which, I honestly, it felt like I needed to go on to that level of education because my dad was a PhD in physics. I needed to.
Oh, yeah.
You have to follow on with the family traditions,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
You have to
Oh, yeah.
keep going. And so, even though that was again very valuable, I mean, going out to Seattle for 6 years, that was where I really grew up as an adult, and all by myself, meeting new people. It was a wonderful experience. It's where I met my husband. I wouldn't trade that 6 years for the world,
Mhm.
but that didn't ultimately advance me toward the goal where I ended up, being a veterinarian. I could have gotten there a little bit faster.
Mhm.
So you just kind of have to think about what you really would like to do, and you don't have to do everything. You don't have to let the outside world sort of push you to do stuff that you don't necessarily want to do. So
Right. Yeah.
that's a tough one, but
Mhm.
and I don't regret any of it. But
Well, that's good. That's good. What's your greatest accomplishment, you'd say?
oh, probably I've got these. I didn't talk about going to get our kids, but we after when we got into our late 30s and realized we weren't going to be able to have kids of our own, we adopted 2 little kids from China. So I have my daughter Anna is 17. She came first. We got her when she was a little less than 2, and then William, my son, who's now 18, about to graduate in about 2 months.
Oh,
He came the next year. So we traveled over to China to get both of those kids, and they've just been wonderful. And I would say just the act of getting them grown up and through school, and
yeah.
and watching them turn into hopefully productive human beings, but the kind and caring and compassionate kids that they are. I can't think of anything more important or better
Right.
that I've been able to do. And my husband and I have worked on that together. It's amazing. It's miraculous when you think about it.
Right. Yeah. That's so awesome. Yeah. Parents should get an award just for keeping kids alive until they're 18,
Yes.
I mean, if you're alive at 18, thumbs up, man.
Keeping them alive and not killing them along the way. There's been days.
Yeah, there's that. So yeah, there should be a huge trophy or gold star or something for parents. Well, that's really cool. Well, I think that's my time. Ooh, man, we're almost 1 hour here. Is there anything else you'd like to bring up, mention? Now that you got everybody's ear or everybody's listening, what would you like to tell the Wildcats listening, watching?
I don't know. I'm proud of all of us, you know. We've all gotten to this 40 years out, and we've lived through some pretty tough stuff these last few years, and it has been such a treat over the last 10 years or so, being able to access friends on Facebook. That didn't exist, and for the longest time you didn't know where anybody was. If they weren't part of your little tight group that stayed together all the time, you didn't know anything. I talk to more of my classmates now, 40 years later, than I did at the time, you know.
I know. I'm the same way. I mean, I don't even think, did you and I even talk in high school? I don't even know. You know,
I don't know. I don't remember. When you said you were in junior high band, I had this little flash. I think he played trumpet.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's about all I remember. There's a lot of people in our class I don't think I ever spoke to.
Yeah.
And now I talk to them. We talk about animals. They ask me animal questions. It's fun. There's good and bad to how much the world has changed and how much information is out there and shared. But some of it's really fun and really helpful. So
yeah, I agree. Well, all right. Well, thanks for your time, Billie. It was a lot of fun catching up. I mean, we just got to know each other for the first time ever. So that was really awesome.
Right.
It's amazing to me that I've said this before too. It seems like I wish I would have known everybody better in high school, because I feel like I could have helped be there for friends, all you guys, and vice versa. I think now we all kind of can gel together because we have all been through stuff, and so we know what that means. And thanks for your time, Billie. It was fun.
Yes, thank you very much. I enjoyed talking to you.
So for Dr. Billie Winter, this is Scott Townsend. Thanks for watching, listening to the last of the Col-Hi Wildcats 1982 podcast. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you later.
The last of the Col-Hi Wildcats 1982 podcast is a Diesel Man production. Visit the last of the Col-Hi Wildcats 1982 YouTube channel, listen on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.
This podcast is made possible by our Patreon members, Butch Bolin, Ben Townsend, Mark Thompson, Sandra Yeager, and Christy Brooks. And by the generous donations made via the GoFundMe campaign.